Hi everyone, yes, que Carlos Tirzate to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making a delicious, warm, and comforting lamb tagine. Without the tagine pot, we're going to be making it in a Dutch oven. You can use a regular pot if that's all you have. So simple to make. The lamb is going to melt in your mouth. The stew is going to be warm from all those spices. It's going to be sweetened with some dried fruit. The whole thing is going to come together in just a few minutes, and then it's just going to bake in the oven for about 2 hours or until the lamb literally is falling off the bone. Let's get started. So before we begin preparing the lamb, I'm just going to get the saffron going. All you need is a little pinch of saffron and some hot water, just boiling hot water, about a cup of it, just to kind of get a little stock going. We're going to use about 2 cups of stock. So I'm just going to get that started in the bowl, set that aside, and now we're gonna get our lamb shanks ready. So I'm using lamb shanks today, but you can definitely use whatever cut of meat that you prefer. The recipe calls for 5 or 6, but I had 7, so I'm just gonna use all of them. They're already washed and dried. What I'm gonna do is drizzle them with a little bit of olive oil. So over here I have the spices. I have half a teaspoon of ground turmeric. I have 1 teaspoon, it's a heaping teaspoon of ground cumin, a heaping teaspoon of ground coriander. I put a little bit extra since there's an extra lamb shank in there. This is about 1.5, but for 4 or 5, 1 heaping teaspoon is enough. Half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground ginger. You can use fresh ginger if you prefer. A 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom seeds, a nice pinch of crushed red pepper flakes. You can leave that out if you want. Just mix these all together and just coat both sides of the lamb. And you also want to add salt and pepper, generous amounts. I would do about 2 teaspoons, so 1 teaspoon per side to get all that flavor in there. Black pepper, this already smells so good. So just make sure that the lamb is coated really well with all of these spices. And you can do this step a day ahead of time and just leave it refrigerated overnight so the flavors can permeate and just really add aroma to the lamb. It could be very well flavored, but again, these are some strong flavors, so just doing it right before you brown the lamb is good enough. Now you can brown this lamb in the Dutch oven in a few batches, or do what I do. I'm gonna stick this in my oven. So my oven is preheated to 500 degrees Fahrenheit because the only thing that I hate more than washing extra dishes is oil splatter all over the place. Now you can definitely, like I said, do this in the pot and all of the flavor will stay in there, but first of all, I don't have the patience. It takes too much time. It's going to take double the time. I'm just going to put this in the oven until they're nicely browned on all sides. They're not going to get as brown as they would in the pot in some oil, but it's going to be good enough. And then any drippings that are on the bottom of the pan, I'm just going to transfer into the pot for the next step, but I'll show you what they look like as soon as they're done. But like I said, if you want to do it in the pot, I would do it in maybe 2 or 3 batches, about 4 or 5 minutes on each side until they're nice and golden. Take the first batch out, set it aside, and just keep doing that until the lamb shanks are nicely brown. But this saves a lot of time, and it takes less time to actually wash the pot than to wait for all of them to brown. Okay, so while the lamb is browning in the oven, I'm just going to get the onion going. I have 1 large onion that I'm just going to finely chop. Okay, and this is going to go in the pot with some olive oil, just 2 to 3 tablespoons. Oops, the top is missing and way more than 2 or 3 tablespoons went in, but it should be fine. And I'm just going to cook the onions over medium heat with a little pinch of salt added to them. Once they're nice and soft and golden, I'm going to go in and add 5 garlic cloves that I finely grated and just warm them through. If by that time the lamb is ready, I'm going to continue and move on and add everything to the pot. Otherwise, if the lamb isn't ready, you're just going to want to take it off of the heat so the onions and the garlic don't burn. So it took the lamb 15 minutes in the oven to brown properly. I did 10 minutes on one side, flipped the lamb shanks over, and did about 5 more minutes on the other side. That's around the same time that it took for my onions to soften. As soon as my onions were golden and nice and soft, I went in and I added the garlic cloves that were grated and just tossed them around until they were nice and warm through. And then I added 1 heaping tablespoon of tomato paste. It's going to add nice depth of flavor. Just cook it with the onions and the garlic for a couple of seconds, maybe a minute max, so that way it can just release all of its flavor. As soon as the lamb shanks come out of of the oven, go ahead and layer them on top of the onion and garlic mixture. It's okay if you layer them on top of each other. Obviously, if you have 7, they won't be able to stay in a single row. I rinsed out the pan with about a cup of water. You want there to be enough liquid so that way the lamb cooks properly. If you don't want to use water, you can use chicken stock. If that's fine, you can definitely use that. But the lamb bones are going to leave tons of flavor, so you really don't need the stock. I always use water. Add the saffron water, 1 can, a 16-ounce can of grated tomatoes or crushed tomatoes. You can use diced tomatoes too. This is going to cook long enough where they're definitely going to melt in there. Another little pinch of salt because you want everything to be nice and flavorful. Cover the pot, and once the mixture comes to a boil, take it off of the heat. You want to reduce the oven's temperature to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and then put the pot in the oven with the lid and let it cook for about 2 to 2.5 hours. It can take up to 3 hours depending on how big your lamb shanks are. You definitely want the meat to be nice and tender and almost falling off the bone. I forgot to say that I also chopped up 12 prunes and I added them to my pot. Now, prunes are going to add the sweetness that's needed for this dish. If you don't want that, you can definitely leave it out. You can substitute apricots for this, dates. The prunes that I get are really nice and moist, but I know that they do sell drier prunes. If your prunes are really dry and they have the pits in them, just soak them in some really hot water, about half a cup or a cup of hot water, so that way they can soften up and you can take out the pits before you add them to your pot. Let the meat cook until it's nice and soft, and it's going to be ready to serve. I would serve this with either some couscous, some lemony Mediterranean rice pilaf, a nice salad, and some toasted bread. The only thing that I'm going to make while this is cooking is the yogurt mint sauce that's going to go with it. I'm going to put this in the oven and then we'll make it. So the yogurt sauce for this is very simple and easy, and you can just put as much or as little of each ingredient as you like. I have a little mixing bowl over here. I'm going to add some plain yogurt to it. I prefer the plain yogurt to the Greek yogurt because I want the sauce to be runny. If all you have is Greek yogurt, you can definitely use it and just thin it out with a little bit of water. Then go ahead and season it with some salt and pepper, as much or as little as you like. I also added the juice of a whole lemon in here so it can be nice and bright. Then I finally chopped a handful of fresh mint leaves. I'm going to add those to the sauce, mix it all up, and it's ready. If you want to add some garlic to it, you can, but I feel like the dish has a lot of flavor in it. All I want is a nice, light, and refreshing sauce to serve with this. So my lamb tagine is out of the oven. It took exactly 2.5 hours to bake in the oven. Now, I did go in after 1.5 hours and I just mixed everything all up. I forgot to record that. I just took the lamb shanks that were on top and I just mixed them on the bottom so that way everything cooks evenly. And at 2.5 hours, the meat is pretty much melting and it's gonna melt in your mouth. It's so good. The prunes also really fell apart and almost melted into the sauce, so they should add some nice sweetness. While the lamb was cooking in the oven, I made some Mediterranean rice pilaf. I didn't record that because I've done that so many times on the channel. I'll link the recipe down below so you can watch it if you want to make it. It's so good with this recipe, especially to soak up all of that delicious sauce. You just add some rice to a plate. You put a nice lamb shank on top with lots and lots of that delicious sauce. And then I like to drizzle some of that yogurt sauce on top. And I'm drooling, I can't wait. Ready for the taste test? I make sure I get a little bit of everything. So much flavor. It's so rich from all of those spices. The onion, the garlic make it so nice and cozy. A hint of sweetness from the prunes. This is not going to be very sweet. If you're thinking this is going to be overly sweet like candy or like that dry fruit has, you don't get that flavor. It's just a little mild sweetness that comes with this. It's almost like if you added extra carrots or onion to the dish, something like that. Maybe a little bit more of honey flavor to it. It is so good. If you don't like prunes, you could leave them out. Like I said, you could use dates instead or leave the dry fruit out altogether. Traditionally, it's also topped with some fried almonds, which I didn't have time to make. But basically, all you do is heat up some vegetable oil. You peel the almonds, so it's a good idea to soak them in water first, and then you just fry them over medium heat until they're nice and golden and crisp, and then you strain them out of the oil and you put them over the dish for a little added crunch. I added some fresh, finely chopped parsley on top for some freshness. I hope you guys give this recipe a try. The exact measurements are on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you think, and if you have any recipe requests, post them below in the comment section and I'll get to them. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.